Now remember, NHK just came out with, NHK is a Japanese news outlet that many studies are showing, this is from simplyinfo.org, that they're showing that cores, multiple cores, parts of it or some or even most of it have been ejected from the planet. We thought that too. Once you breach containment, that was one of my big concerns. Well, where'd the core go after an explosion like that, whether it be steam or hydrogen explosion or a combination of both? So it got, I always say the term, it got sneezed out all over the place. I mean, it's totally, it's a huge mess. And,
Yeah, you're talking about like the MOX reactor. There's actually 3 steps to what happened there. The first is they have superheated steam from the special fuel bundle arrays that actually create tritiated, superheated water. The second is it compresses the corium, so you get especially when you get unstable plutonium isotopes, because they're making MOX reactor pellets for nuclear weapons, because it was an illegal facility. And MOX is very, very touchy. So they ended up with an induced criticality from the hydrogen explosions that later created a critical, literally small nuclear explosion. So there were particles and chunks of these fuel rod assembly bundles that were identified as far as 65 to 75 kilometers away. And there are probably smaller particles that were carried 200 or 300 kilometers. So there have been estimates by scientists that there's a ring of at least 300 miles where fairly large particle plutonium and other highly dangerous isotope pellets actually made it all the way to south and north and in every direction, 300 kilometers at least. Which is why the Ronald Reagan, when these things happened, they're getting sprayed with not only nanoparticles but larger particles as well, of very highly radioactive material, especially from reactor 3. And all 3 reactors completely lost containment. They're now kind of saying that, hey, yeah, we lost containment completely. And by the way, one of the most dangerous things, it wasn't just the tsunami cutting out the power backup systems, it was the earthquake. So reactor number 1 lost containment of the reactor core with the earthquake alone. And there was also some damage to some of the cooling pools of other reactors, like in OI, that occurred right as the reactors of these other reactor sites were hit. So it's not just Fukushima that's in danger. If they have major other quakes, which, by the way, because of the release of plasma-inducing effects of geotectonics, there's been a 500% increase in level 5 earthquakes or higher in Japan. And, if astrophysicists want to combat and challenge me on this, that volcanism and earthquakes are geotectonic events. And there's a change in the level of particles in space, in the solar system or galaxy, depending on the area that you're transiting through in the solar system or the galactic arm. And that changes the rate of volcanism because you change the plasma effects of the atmosphere. And as you release radioisotopes, you increase the transitive energy, so you increase the risk of having more geotectonic or volcanic events. So we're going to see a lot more bad stuff, in other words, on the Ring of Fire.
Well, Dr. Bill, even weather.com yesterday also talking about off the coast of Japan is a island that's being formed by volcanism, and what they're worried about there is a collapse of I guess it's the ash dome, and creating another tsunami that way. Now, this one is 600 miles south of Tokyo, but even still, the way
you're talking about it's like a giant rock mushroom made of volcanic magma that's hardened in the ocean. As it falls, it generates a giant tsunami wave. And that's, by the way, that's how most tsunamis have been made over geological history. And the best site, I think, overall for looking for new information is not only Simply Info, but also go to rents.com. You'll see the latest Fukushima updates. I do a special show on the second hour as a guest on Rents Network every Thursday evening, 4 or 5 Thursdays of the month, the second hour, which is usually 8 to 9 p.m. Pacific time, live. And there's a lot of really bad stories here. I mean, children of the U.S. Navy sailors are now getting cancers. Proof that radiation is killing the Pacific. Dana Durnford did a video. Plutonium, hundreds of different radionuclides pour in the Pacific, and they're dumping the water in directly. No filtration at all, no ALP system. And, of course, they've already proven now that the 3 Fukushima reactors melted through all containment. But we don't really even have any proper safety measures being done here in North America, because volcanism is not just increasing in earthquakes in Japan along the Ring of Fire, but also in New Madrid. There's earthquakes in Oklahoma and around the world. in areas that have never been seeing earthquakes for a long time, and the frequency of level 5 earthquakes on the entire planet has increased roughly 500%. So something bad is coming. Now, it's my suspicion that there's 3 reasons for it. The first is we've changed the air to a plasma because we're geoengineering the upper atmosphere as part of our U.S. space shield, which is literally the plasma space shield against incoming nuclear weapons. And this is in addition to theater air defense, which is more advanced in the Patriot system or the Iron Dome. And, of course, it's classified, which is why I'm releasing it, because THAAD, or theater air defense, has been operational since 1982. And I was clear of this when I was told, as a physician taking care of employees at U.S. Space Command Strategic Events and Star Wars. So you won't hear them trying to criticize me. They want to just attack my reputation because they don't want you to know the truth, that they put this system up there thinking it's fail-safe, and it isn't. It's very dangerous to the planet because it turns the air into a plasma and increases the destruction of the ozone layer, which is amplified by Fukushima dramatically. So the ozone layer is going poof. You can get a suntan at the bottom of my pool now, which you never could before. You can get damage to your eyes in the midday, and the sun is now getting very toxic. And if you don't believe me, as I tell people, please don't believe a damn thing I say. Go test for yourself. Go to less EMF and get the radiation detectors for UVA, B, and C. And if you measure these radiations, what you're going to find, A, B, C, D, those reactions, A will tan you, B will burn you, C will give you cancer, and D will give you death. Good numbers, eh? Good letters. They explain exactly what will happen to you. And Fukushima is a warning. We are now observing the early signs of death of Mother Earth.
And it's not just the economy that's dying. We also see that fish in the Pacific Ocean are dying as well. In another study, and this is from Natural News, they broke this, Dead Sea creatures are covering 98% of the ocean floor off of California coast, up from just 1% before Fukushima. A new study recently published in the journal Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences recently discovered that the number of dead sea creatures blanketing the floor of the Pacific is higher than it has been in the 24 years that they've been monitoring this. In March 2012, less than 1% of the seafloor beneath Station M, they say, was covered in dead sea salps. But now, more than 98% of it is covered in decomposing organisms. Now, other ocean research stations are reporting the same data. And of course, the location and the timing of this massive die-off in the ocean points the finger at Fukushima as we see this massive amount of radiation that continues to pour into the ocean and is making its way slowly to the west coast of the United States.
There has been an earthquake in Oklahoma. Actually, there have been 103 of them just since Friday.
Just like California, where most Americans may think all our earthquakes are centered. But California's San Andreas is just one fault zone. There are at least 4 active earthquake zones that cover this country, all of which seismologists say have had historic eruptions, and each could have another catastrophic strike at any time.
Earthquakes are a national hazard, and it's in these areas away from California, away from the places we think about, where there can be some of the greatest risk.
What about America's heartland? We're on the second most active fault in the country, and that's the new Madrid fault. It runs from St. Louis to Memphis, and this is Reelfoot Lake, 16 miles long and created 200 years ago by what is still today the most powerful series of earthquakes in American history. It happened nearly 200 years ago on the morning of December 16th, 1811. An estimated 7.5 on the Richter scale. It was followed by a series of 2,000 aftershocks over the next 5 months, some measuring 8.0 and felt as far away as Boston. New Madrid is the biggest fault line east of...
The first earthquake occurred around 2 a.m. on December 16, 1811 in northeastern Arkansas. Estimates place the magnitude of this earthquake around 8.1, and it was followed within hours by another shock nearly as strong as the first. All through the night, the region was shaken. When dawn brought light, the townspeople found the air clouded by a reddish haze, and the landscape changed forever. In the following 2 months, the region would experience 3 more major earthquakes and almost 2,000 aftershocks. On January 23, 1812, another shock estimated at 7.8 occurred. As people stumbled into the night, they saw flashes of light emanating from the ground. Many found themselves navigating through fallen trees, wading through sand and water, or stumbling into crevices that had opened in the ground. The Mississippi River rocked back and forth, tossing boats onto shores which themselves were crumbling into the river. It was nothing short of a living nightmare. On February 7, 1812, the strongest shock yet rocked the town of New Madrid so violently that it finally fell away into the river, joining the fates of several other settlements. The river itself ran backwards, and in Tennessee a great forest suddenly became a vast lake. The ground was seen rolling like the swells of an ocean. When the swell peaked, great fissures opened in the ground, some of them running for hundreds of feet. 1,300 miles away in Boston, Massachusetts, church bells rang out in response to the shaking, and in Washington, D.C., James Madison, the sitting president of the United States, was awakened from his sleep while the White House shook.
An earthquake so powerful it shifted the Earth's axis? That's what scientists say happened on Saturday when Chile was shaken by a megatremor that registered 8.8 on the Richter scale. One of those scientists is with us now, Andreas Rietvbrock, a professor of earth sciences at England's Liverpool University. He's analyzed the area in Chile that was struck by the quake. Andreas, let's start with this slightly disbelievable analysis. Although we have to believe you guys are the scientists, how does an earthquake shift the Earth's axis?
So the earthquake is redistributing the masses, so the rocks on the surface. And if you have such a big earthquake, you're actually talking about 200, 300 kilometers in length and about 40, 50 to 100 kilometer in width. So you're moving these rocks up nearer to the Earth's surface and redistributing in that way the masses of the Earth. It's like if you have watched the Olympics, the figure skating, if you look at the pirouette there, if the athletes move their arms closer to the center, they are just speeding up and spinning much more quickly.
An effective explanation. I want to ask you, though, how often does this happen? We've heard that the tremor, 8.8 on the Richter scale, made Chile's earthquake the 5th most powerful since 1900. How high do you have to get for this kind of effect to take place?
So you have to be in the high magnitude 8 earthquakes as far as I can see it. The analysis was done by NASA, and I think we are right now only beginning to understand and actually able to compute these kind of very small effects.
Now, speaking of computations, another analysis done in the wake of this earthquake shows that the day actually got shorter. And we're not talking about the day just in Chile, the day for everybody around the globe. Can you try to help explain how that happens?
Yeah, because as I explained early on, you're changing the rotation speed of the Earth because you redistributed the masses. Therefore, the Earth is not spinning so fast anymore, and therefore our day has changed in this.
All right, Andreas, thank you so much for joining us. Andreas Rietvbrock of Liverpool University in England, explaining how the Earth's axis shifted and the day got shorter.
Before him.
Edgar Cayce made some extraordinary and spectacular Earth change predictions. Probably the biggest one was that the rotational axis of the Earth would change. And that's something that would be catastrophic, probably even beyond what we could imagine if that took place literally.
If the tilt axis of the Earth shifted slightly, the entire mass of the Earth would have to reconfigure itself. It would shift ocean basins, it would shift where valleys are, where mountains are.
Some of Cayce's visions of that future were truly terrifying.
He speaks of Japan going into the ocean, inundations for southeastern United States, perhaps in a very slow way, but a permanent kind of inundation.
Cayce also warned the East Coast would not be spared.
Portions of the now east coast of New York, or New York City itself, will in the main disappear. This will be another generation, though. Here, while the southern portions of Carolina, Georgia, these will disappear. This will be much sooner.
He also suggests that Europe would change either geologically or climatologically in the twinkling of an eye.
Cayce actually foresaw these as part of the shifting of the poles. He stated that the Great Lakes would flow down through the Mississippi Valley system and from there flow right into the Gulf.
Amazingly, Cayce, who knew nothing about plate tectonics, said signs within the Earth would warn us of this coming pole shift.
The most dramatic predictions that Edgar Cayce made is that there would be the onset of major Earth changes that would escalate in activity from 1958 on through 1998. From that period on, these trends, they would escalate again, then we would know that the pole shift was coming.
There will be the upheavals in the Arctic and in the Antarctic that will make for the eruption of volcanoes in the torrid areas, and this will begin in those periods in 58 to 98.
Volcanic activity events are increasing. The torrid zone activity has increased along with general world increase by something like 500% in the last 50 years.
Cayce also predicted a surge in violent storms and earthquakes in this period. In the last 10 years, hurricane activity in the Atlantic has been at its highest, and an increasing number of earthquakes are being detected around the globe. And in 1999, German researchers measured more than 200 earthquakes in a period of 7 months above the Arctic Circle.
Do you think he's on his way? He doesn't even know that we're here. Is he okay? Please tell me he's okay.
Laura.
Okay, try to call him again.
There's no signal.
Try.
Nothing's working.
Well, just
Everything's down.
This is so bad. He's out there by himself.
Make sure you know where to find your family in an emergency. Start your plan at ready.gov.